Welcome back to the latest episode of In the Flat Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Kill, joined as always by Jess and Jordan. And we're excited to come back to you guys this week. A lot of fall camps are opening this week, which means we're that much closer to college football starting. We'll talk a little bit this week about some of the quarterback battles that are happening out there. We'll talk, dive a little more into some of the questions that we received, and hit a little bit of the news. And also, coaches poll came out today, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Let's start first with our opening drive here with Notre Dame and USC renewing their rivalry. So I know we talked a lot about this last year, but after it's going to be probably 3 to 4 years break, Notre Dame USC announced that their rivalry will return with 4 games from 2030 to 2033. The only difference here would be instead of USC coming out in October, they can't deal with the cold, so they're going to decide every game has to be the first, second, or third week of the year. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to play every year the first, second, or third game of the year. So, or like could be
It's the
yeah.
2030 is
So
week one.
we'll see how that goes. It's going to be kind of weird having that game at the beginning
1,
of the
2, or
year.
3.
It feels like an end of the year type of game, rivalry kind of game. But it's better to have than not have. So I won't complain too much about the fact that it's at a different time slot. And with that, Indiana and Notre Dame had a series scheduled for 2030, 2031. Indiana did ask to be released from that series. And so I will like to present to you their non-conference schedule from 2026 to 2030. 2026, they have the gauntlet of North Texas, Howard, and Western Kentucky. Then they go even harder battles into Kennesaw State, Indiana State, UMass in 2027. Then they move on to Austin Peay, Eastern Michigan, and Miami of Ohio in 2028. 2029 brings the powerhouses of Ball State, Eastern Illinois, and Western Kentucky again. And in 2030, they currently have on their schedule Indiana State and Delaware. So I'm not sure how they're going to make it for those difficult 5-year schedule there with the difficult teams, but we wish Indiana the best in their journeys. With that, any thoughts on the USC Notre Dame rivalry coming back? Any thoughts on Indiana's non-conference schedule? We'll start with you, Jess.
I mean, for the USC Notre Dame side of it, obviously I'm the neutral party here. You guys are, I would say, slightly biased in favor of Notre Dame.
A little bit.
I do agree with your end thoughts there about it. It's better to have it in the early weeks than not have it at all. I think it's too historic of a rivalry to have lost it fully. That being said, I do think USC did kind of take a bit of a coward's way out there, having them all be early in the season, but I also understand that. With how things are now, while we expect the playoff to be expanded, there is no guarantees of it. And the truth is USC does tend to have a harder schedule than Notre Dame if they end up playing Oregon or Ohio State, Michigan, even now Indiana if they're looking, able to keep up what they did. Illinois has had good years and bad years, but they can't afford to lose too many games. We saw this year 3 losses and you're out. If you can't beat the 3 best teams on your schedule, and I think you do expect Notre Dame to continue to be one of the best teams in the country moving forward. USC hasn't been as good recently. If they're like, okay, warmer weather, even if it's at Notre Dame, that gives us more of a fighting chance. We don't want to lose the rivalry. So I get it. Is it a bit of a coward's way out? Yes. But at the end of the day, they're going to try and put things a bit more in their favor, and Notre Dame agreed to it, so no big deal there. For Indiana, I think that it's kind of similar. Look, Alabama will schedule, how many times do we complain in the middle of the season there? They get a bye week, and then they get Mercer or something like that. So if your 3 non-conference games are going to be 3 warm-up games in the middle of the season before you enter a gauntlet, that's fine with me. I think then that, it's one of those things where if they go 11-1 or something, and that one loss is to the only other ranked team they play, that should be taken into consideration. But if they end up having a season where they schedule Ohio State, USC, and Oregon, then and they go 10-2 in that stretch, or better, even 11-1, the fact that they played 3 cupcakes to start the year doesn't mean much to me. And until they expand the playoffs and teams get a bit more wiggle room, I think that's just gonna be how it is. Indiana now has real expectations on them. They don't need to schedule Power 4 teams out of conference to bolster their schedule in case it comes down to 10-2 Indiana versus 10-2 Michigan. Nowadays, the expectation is that they're going to be up there. They're starting, as we're going to be getting into a bit, they're ranked in the top 10 entering this season. All right, fluff your schedule. Show us what you got. I don't have a real problem with it from that perspective.
Jordan, what are your thoughts?
The Notre Dame USC, I think scheduling it early is going to be like how every other school is. I mean, Notre Dame played Miami week, early. Ohio State, Texas early. I feel like the earlier you play, the better chance you have at the end of the season. Yeah, you lost the first game of the year, second game of the year. If you will go undefeated the rest, you have a better chance. Notre Dame stuff, USC and Notre Dame, I think it was needed. I don't care if it's played at Christmas Day or first week. It's a rivalry game that Notre Dame likes to see. USC fans like to see, and I'm glad it's back. Indiana, though, no, I get the expanded playoffs, things like that. I think with NIL, we're going to see a lot more 2-loss teams. I feel like you don't want to have lesser strength of schedule than another 2-loss team, and not having just at least one better out of non-conference game on your schedule when whoever Alabama, Texas have that, or whoever it is has that, they're going to push you out. I feel like NIL has come to a point where there are there are going to be more and more 2-3-loss teams in the picture because we're starting to get a little more even in conferences. So I feel like in the short term, right now it might be fine, but I think going down, the road, if we're staying at this 12-team playoff format and NIL doesn't get regulated at some point here shortly, I think it's gonna not be the best on Indiana for not playing a better non-conference team. I mean, just in the span, like the reason Miami got into the college football playoff last year is because that one first game they beat Notre Dame. If they didn't beat Notre Dame and lost those 2 other games, or at least lost one, it would be a different story going into the last week of the season. So I feel like there's going to be 2-loss teams that go in, and one of their losses is a top 5 team. You're going to get looked at better than, okay, well, if Indiana drops any game that's not a top team, it's going to be looked at different because
I guess for Indiana, from my perspective on it, I just feel like, can you schedule at least one Power 4 team? Like, it doesn't have to be like a juggernaut team. Like Alabama this year, we joke about their schedules in the past, but they played Florida State last year, lost. They're playing Florida State again this year. In 2030, they're playing Notre Dame. I'm not saying like to go out there and kill yourself with a schedule, but like at least challenge yourself a little bit out of conference. I just feel like, I don't know. I just feel like 5 years straight of like non-conference opponents that are just terrible that you can't remember their name. I just feel like that's just not a way to do it. I feel like you need at least, I don't know. I just hope they get held accountable for that. If they are, to your point, they are 10-2. and they go against a Texas or Alabama. I hope that Texas or Alabama comes out on top if they played someone else out of conference, because I just feel like it's not fair if they're just able to float through with those out of conference schedule. So, all right, let's move on to the coaches pool. So, coaches poll came out today. Let's go for the top 10 really quick. You have number 1 Ohio State, number 2 Oregon, number 3 Georgia, number 4 Texas, number 5 Notre Dame, number 6 Indiana, number 7 Miami, 8 Texas A&M, 9 Oklahoma, and 10 Ole Miss. Just missing the cut of the top 15 would be Alabama at 11, Texas Tech at 12, LSU 13, USC 14, and BYU at 15. So, what do you think they got wrong? What do you think they got right? Start with you, Jordan. What are you thinking?
I think honestly, I think it's pretty good. I feel like the top 10 it's so hit or miss. It could be a lot of switching around, just whoever's in the top 10's in the top 10. The biggest thing that I have a weird, and we talked about it last week with, is Indiana top of the Big Ten. How are you going to not put them over a Texas or Georgia, or at least Oregon, when they're defending national champs or college football playoff champs, they're defending Big Ten champs, and Ohio State, Oregon, and even Georgia and Texas are above them. That right there is just the biggest thing. I think the top 10 to me is pretty good. Maybe Texas A&M is a big question mark for me. I feel like last year they had a lot of what ifs and question marks, especially at quarterback. And that's, but besides that, I think the top 10
Jess, what are you thinking about
are pretty good in my head.
Honestly, I don't have too much that I would really disagree with. I'm a bit surprised that Penn State is as high as they are at 17. But in terms of the top 10, A&M and Ole Miss are a big question mark for me, but I don't know who I would put in over them. I don't think, for as much money as LSU spend, I don't think they deserve to be just put in the top 10. They have to go out there and they have to prove it. I can see them being a team that quickly shoots up into the top 10. One or two semi-notable wins, I think will put them in there. But it's kind of weird that it with how much Ole Miss lost, that they are still as high as they are, but then so it kind of feels like it's with Trinidad coming back, they're getting some benefit of the doubt. Expectations are going to be that they're able to replicate what they did last year with the pieces they've still got. But then they also didn't give that kind of benefit of the doubt to Indiana, who was just our undefeated national champion, Big Ten champ, all that sort of stuff that Jordan was saying. And Indiana's dropped all the way to outside the top 5. I think Indiana should have been kind of just given that number 1 spot kind of by default. But it's weird that I don't think anybody considers them right now the best team in the country. So it's just kind of a weird spot. I don't think they really got anything all that wrong. Everything I'd be saying is a little nitpicky. And I don't remember the last time we looked at one of these lists, these early top 25, top 10 lists, and really didn't have any serious complaints about it. So, kind of good on them.
Yeah, I'm surprised in Indiana. I mean, I will say, if you compare them to Ohio State, while Ohio State has a good returning quarterback and receiver, they have to replace a lot on defense, and I feel like they're just getting the benefit of the doubt, where Indiana is not getting the benefit of the doubt, just because they're so new to being a kind of a power in college football. I think I mentioned in the chat, but Oregon to me is just, everybody's just on Oregon. They're going to do all these amazing things this year, and I'm I just still got to see it because, yeah, they've been great in the regular season, but the playoff status, to me, really haven't had to show up. They haven't. They beat they beat them Texas Tech last year. But outside of that, I mean, they are getting blown out in the playoffs. I just feel like I'm not a believer of Dan Lanning like that yet. Maybe this is his year to prove that. Georgia is a weird one for me too, because people keep putting Georgia up here the last few years, and they do good, but not great. I'm interested to see how they back up this ranking this year. Um, Texas A&M, I don't know if you compared their schedule last year to this year, but last year they got basically the bottom of the SEC in their in how they pulled the schedule. This year they get the top of the SEC. I do wonder from a Texas A&M perspective if they're going to make it back to where they were last year. I feel like they're going to be back into that 9-3, 8-4 type of range just because of the schedule that they have to play, and it's going to be totally different than what they did last year. So that would be my only call out there. USC, everybody's on USC. I still don't. I don't see it. But other than that, I think the rankings are. You're like you guys said are a pretty good spot. There's not there you can nitpick here or there, but for the most part, there's a lot of this unanswered questions this year. Just I if you told me this whole thing would be reversed by the end of the year, I could see that, or I could see if it stood pat, I could see that. There's just a lot of different opportunities for the rankings next year. So looking forward to seeing how it plays out. All right. So I mentioned earlier that the fall camps are starting to open. I figure we can take a look into some of the quarterback competitions that are out there. And you guys give me anything that intrigues you that's happening. So start with Alabama. The battle is between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. So obviously they're trying to replace Ty Simpson. Austin Mack is in his fourth year of DeBoer's system. He's the former Washington quarterback that followed DeBoer to Alabama back in 2023. And so he's really good, knowledgeable. The playbook, I think he completed 24-32 passes for 228 yards and 2 touchdowns in 4 games last year. So not a lot to go on, but decent stats. Now, other guy that's being talked about here is Keelan Russell. And so he was a 5-star quarterback recruit, one of the better quarterback recruits I've seen in high school. He didn't do much last year either, 11-15 for 143 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's like one of those ultra athletic quarterbacks that could do a lot of things in the backfield. He'll need time to grow, I have a feeling. But his potential and his ceiling is much higher. So that's the matchup there. Tennessee, you have 2 young guys in George McIntyre and Faison Brandon. So George McIntyre is a redshirt freshman, so he backed up last year. Joey Aguilar, and then he's a former 4-star recruit. He had an uneven spring, didn't win it outright. And then you have Faison Brandon, who is a true freshman, who was one of the top quarterbacks coming in this coming year. He's another athletic, great quarterback from North Carolina. Trying to see who was actually going to win that one. Then you have Clemson, who have Christina Viziana versus Tate Reynolds. Vizina starts on top, and I feel like he's going to end up winning this, but he sat out the 2023 season and then backed up Kubnik for 2 years. So he has a good hold of the system. But Tate Reynolds has been pushing him since the spring, so it's been interesting to see. He's a little more athletic, I would say, of the quarterbacks, so we'll see what Dabo Swinney wants to do. Florida, you have Tremel Jones versus Aaron Filio. Jones is a redshirt freshman who backed up DJ Lagway last year. And then you have Filio, who came in from Georgia Tech with 3 years of eligibility left. He backed up Haynes King last year. He's thrown for more yards, 938, 2 touchdowns, and also 3 interceptions. He has more experience, but not by a lot. Then you have North Carolina, which is going to be just a mess, I have a feeling. But you have Billy Edwards Jr., who's coming over from Wisconsin. He's a 6-year passer who's played at Wake Forest, Maryland, and Wisconsin. Then you have O'Neill came over for Texas A&M, where Bobby Petrino, the new offensive coordinator, came from. So you think you have a little bit of a leg up. And then you have Vanderbilt, who's replacing Diego Pavier, who has Jared Curtis versus Blaze Berlowitz. So Curtis is one of the better. I think he was number 1 ranked quarterback last year, and he played 10 minutes from the stadium. So you would think he has the leg up, but obviously Blaze is a little more experience coming over from New Mexico State, where he's been with the same coordinator these last 4 years. So those are kind of the matchups you have at quarterback out there right now. It's anything intrigue you, or which one are you kind of keeping a close eye on? Start with you, Jess. What are you watching? What are you most intrigued by with these different matchups out there?
I'm going to take the easy way out here. I'm just going to say Alabama. Kalen DeBoer needs to figure things out there, and that starts with the quarterback position. Simpson was interesting last year in that, like, he had so little college experience. We were talking about the struggles that a guy of Arch Manning, and his stature came in and struggled against, a lot of these really good defenses. And it took him time to, get over, some of the things that he was struggling with. And over the course of the year, he got better and better. And that came with experience. Right now, it'll be interesting to see if DeBoer goes with Austin Mack, who he's had 4 years of college ball at the bare minimum in DeBoer's system. I forget if he's only played 4 years or if he's coming up at the very end of his eligibility here. But Mack was not Mack, Russell. He redshirted last year. He's got very little experience, but he theoretically might have more upside. And so which direction does Alabama go with? The guy with the more upside, or the guy who might be able to just come in and win games a bit more immediately, who might be a bit more limited, not have, like that upside that a younger guy can come in and develop and provide for you. DeBoer, the standard at Alabama is national championships. I think DeBoer is going to lean Mack. I think he's going to go with the guy that has more experience, that can come in and just get him those immediate wins, get him into the playoffs again, and then they'll see where they can go with the rest of the roster. Because if they miss the playoffs again, who knows what happens to them.
Yep. Jordan, which one are you keeping your eye on?
Just took mine at Alabama. I think that's the easiest choice. I feel like the other schools think the reason Alabama is going to be looked at so much more this year is because they're kind of in their head, in the sense, was DeBoer the choice they should have made after Nick Saban left. I feel like that is on everyone's mind and will be for the next the year or two, depending on how DeBoer does this year. So I'm not really Alabama was the choice, just in the sense that I just said he took the easy one out. That's basically the reason. Is DeBoer needs this. That if you miss the playoffs this year, or at least I feel like if you get first rounded in the playoffs this year, especially with 12 teams, Alabama fans and people are going to be, did we make the right choice with DeBoer? And I think Austin Mack probably will be, in my, I don't know. It's a hard choice. I feel like the more athletic quarterback needs to be what Bama goes to. That's DeBoer's whole system.
I would just throw it all on. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out with
Athletic.
the best possible
That's his
upside.
thing.
I'm throwing it all on Keelan Russell. I feel like,
yeah, that's his offense. I mean, Washington, what was their offense? High flying.
I agree. I think they need it. They need something to get explosive to make them different from everybody else. If you put Mack in there, I feel like you're probably gonna have an average offense. Where you put Keelan Russell, you have a chance to have more of a dynamic offense. But you're gonna have highs and lows, but you just have to kind of live with it. I feel.
You got to also look. There's a reason he's on his 4th year in college football. It's the same reason we talked about Ty Simpson last year. There must have been something throughout the first 3 years that they saw why he didn't start. What is it? At this point, why waste the time? They need something. He needs something. DeBoer needs to show Bama fans.
Okay. The one I'm keeping an eye on, the one I'm most intrigued by is probably Vanderbilt, and I want to see, like, I'm a big Clark Lee fan as far as a coach goes. And so I want to see how he replaces Diego Pavia. I'm, was the success the last couple of years is because they had Pavia? I don't think it was just that, because I feel they have a really good defense. But, I mean, it kind of correlated with the fact that they had him. That's when they had their success. So I'm interested to see what the next step looks like. Can he get Jared Curtis up and running, like, by game 1? I don't know. So that's going to be the question. I'm interested to see what they do with the offense and how they change from last year. I would love to see them continue to do well, because I feel like I like Vanderbilt as a school, so I would love to see them, like, continue to do well. And showcase it wasn't just a 2-year wonder with Diego Pavia. So I'm interested to watch that one. All right. Let's go to our next segment here. That is in the flat or out of bounds. So obviously, you guys can agree or disagree with any of these statements here. All right, starting first, Lane Kiffin will take LSU to the college football playoff in his first season. Jordan, in the flat or out of bounds?
I think it's in the flat. And I talked about it last week. Last week. This will be Lane Kiffin's probably best defense he's had since forever, since being a head coach. LSU is keeping their defensive coordinator from last year, when they had one of the best defenses in college football. And honestly, their schedule is it's not the easiest, but they only play
Miss.
Clemson, Texas A&M,
Ole Miss too.
They got decent Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. Ole Miss, yeah. They're at Ole Miss, at Tennessee. I think they have a chance. I think, like I said, Lane Kiffin has one of the best offenses in college football every year. Now imagine just having one of the best defenses in college football with his offensive mind. I just don't see him not making the college football playoffs this year. With the 12 team,
Jess,
I think it's an easy lock with this 12 team.
I don't think so. I think they're going to be just on the fringe outside looking in. Like Alabama, LSU, anything can happen. They do get the benefit of that game being at LSU. Texas, LSU, if Texas is living up to the hype, they're just going to be one of the best teams in the country. I don't think the fact that game's at LSU will matter too much. Tennessee, another team that we glossed over them a bit with the quarterback battle, but it's always hard to go into Knoxville. If A&M's as good as we think they can be, that's going to be ridiculously difficult. Lane Kiffin returning to Ole Miss, that crowd is going to be insane. And I do think they should handedly beat Clemson, by like 2 scores, games at home to start the year. Unless it's just listing them at home and that game's on a neutral field. Is that the case or not? I feel like they've done some of those. No, it's saying it's in Baton Rouge. So I think that if they get 2 losses, which I think is very possible, like I think it's going to be very dependent on who those losses are to and just how the rest of the schedule looks. I just think there's too much up in the air there for me to comfortably say, in the flat there. So I'm going to say out of bounds.
Yeah, I could see that. For me, I think I'm going to
disappointed, but I
don't
feel.
I think out of bounds too. I think they're going to be like a 93 team and just miss it on the outside, like a Texas was last year. I think they'd be a very similar position. I think there's going to be some hiccups just because this first one, and I guess it all for me hedges on is Sam Leavitt healthy? How will he perform? If he's like back to 2024 Sam Leavitt and he's like can run the offense well, they do. So
LSU,
will it be done next year?
LSU knows how to do it, though.
I feel like they're just going to miss it out. So that's my call there. All right, next one. Miami is the ACC's only legitimate national title contender. Jess?
I'd say in the flat. A team like Clemson could be interesting, but they've got a lot of question marks with all the pieces they've had leave over the past few years. And Sweeney's inability or reluctance to really go into the portal, and I don't think anybody takes Duke or Virginia too seriously. Louisville, maybe, but I just think Miami's just on a tier above the rest of the conference. I'm going to go in the flat.
Jordan, what would you say? Agree?
In the flat, I feel like it showed last year, them getting to the championship game, but also the 2 teams that were in the ACC championship were not great. So I think Miami still is a dominant team.
Hopefully they make it to
the
ACC title game this year.
Dominate
they changed
the
the rules
again this year.
What happened last year will not happen again, hopefully. So, for me, the only team that you guys had mentioned, and the only team I would call out is SMU. They made the playoffs in 2024. They had a pretty good season last year, even though Kevin Jennings was basically hurt most of last year. Played through it. They're slotted to finish second in the ACC, and I do like Kevin Jennings is back. I have a feeling they're going to be pushing for the playoffs. So if you get into the playoffs, you have a shot. So I would say out of bounds just for the fact that I think SMU has a shot to make it there if they can get on a roll and get some of their pieces up that they've been recruiting. All right. Dabo Swinney must make the college football playoff to quiet the concerns about Clemson's direction. Jordan.
That's in the flat, 100%. We've seen team coaches get fired for 2 years not in the college football playoffs. If you don't make it again, it just shows that Dabo should have done what Nick Saban did and was like, well, I don't like the way the college football is going. I don't want to do it again anymore, and did something and left. If you're not going to get in that transfer portal and get those players, it's going to be hard for you to build something nowadays because there are so many like player analysts and coaching analysts nowadays on teams that they just make these transfer portal teams that are dominant. So not doing. I think
Jess, you agree?
There's going to be huge concerns.
Yeah, I agree.
If he doesn't,
I think they're going to have to turn a bit to the run game. They let Klubnik throw it a lot last year, and after what looked like a promising season in 24, he kind of fell back into his bad ways in 25. The lack of attacking the portal is going to be very prevalent. I mean, their offensive line is going to be very young. Particularly on the outside. I think it's the interior has a couple of vets. But they've got some good pieces. TJ Moore is back in the wide receiver room. They got Naeem Burrows, one of the best players in the country. They signed him. But there's just a lot of question marks about them, and the noise outside isn't going to quiet down if they don't make the playoffs. Sweeney's gotta get this program back on track.
No, I agree. I don't think he will make the playoffs. I think the concerns will be there. I don't think they're going to fire him, but I think they're going to be as hot as this season's ever been going into next season if he doesn't make the playoffs this year. But then that'll be his one shot to kind of correct it. And you might see him go all in on the transfer portal finally after this season if they don't get to the playoffs and finally realize he needs to do something to save his job. So we'll see how that works out. All right, so that's it for this week's In the Flat or Out of Bounds. So let's move on to the route tree. So let's start with a safe route here first. Which conference is guaranteed to receive multiple college football bids? Like if you had to bet your life on a conference receiving, let's say at least three teams, which one are you betting on? I'm sorry, you, Jordan.
All of them. I mean, we're not having a group of
well,
six.
Group of six will make it. I mean,
or Pac-12 team this year. It's going to be okay. SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12. All will have. I'm joking. This one is. I feel like
probably both. Honestly,
it could be either SEC or the Big Ten. It really depends. I think both will get at least three, but it's going to really depend on where teams fall at the point. I think Ohio State, Oregon, at least for the Big Ten, Georgia, Alabama, if they can turn it around from last year, and then a throw-in team for both. Indiana, whatever, things like that. So I think
you agree, Jess? Do you think any other
Big Ten
conference
and
could do
SEC
it?
can make something or have multiple bids.
Could the Big 12 do it? For example, could BYU, Texas Tech, and another team get in there?
I don't think so. I think it's really just up to the because I think there's a real chance both the Big Ten and the SEC each have four. I mean, you've got Ohio State and Oregon who feel like absolute locks for the Big Ten. Then you've got Indiana who, I mean, the expectation is that they're going to be able to continue a bit where they left off. And then, it really wouldn't shock me if a fourth team like a Michigan made a push. USC, as much as you guys don't like that. And then for the SEC, I mean, you've got Georgia, feels like an absolute lock. Texas should be a lock, but they do have some question marks there. Then you've got like LSU that we were just talking about. Like, it wouldn't shock me if they made it. Could a team like Ole Miss continue where they left off? Could Tennessee turn it around? Like, there are plenty of teams that I see the vision, I see the path. Alabama, like. So then Notre Dame, we expect to take a spot, and then there's like a couple like for the Big 12 to take, maybe the Pac. I don't know. But I think it's if you put $500,000 on the Big 10 or the SEC to get 3 in, just one of them to get 3 in, never mind each, I think you're gonna be pretty. I think that mine would be minus money. I think that line would be minus.
I I think it's like the same thing Tony says all the time. He'd like one of these conferences is going to beat up on each other, and it's just gonna kind of fall into place where 4 are going to get in or 3 are going to get in, just because Ohio State lost to Indiana, but Indiana lost to Oregon, and it's just or whatever. It's going to be a huge toss up.
Ohio State,
situation.
Ohio State, Oregon, and Indiana all have 1 loss, and let's say they all like kind of cannibalize each other. Ohio State beats Oregon, but Oregon beats Indiana, but Indiana beats Ohio State. Then it's some combination in the conference championship. I don't think whoever loses that would be penalized too much that they'd fall out of the race. And then you still get 3 teams in, but they did technically cannibalize each other. Then there's a 2-loss Michigan team that comes in, or a 2-loss USC team that makes it, something like that. I see that path happening. I don't think that's like out of the realm of possibility. Same thing with the SEC. Like, Georgia beats Texas, but Texas beats LSU. LSU beats Bama, but Bama beats Georgia. Like.
Why are we not any like
Oklahoma? Yeah,
just do you remember Oklahoma's
very
in
reliant
the SEC
on
too?
Matier's
I feel like we forget.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. I can't believe we were forgetting Oklahoma. They're very viable. They're a top 10 team. So is A&M. Like, so is Ole Miss. Like, the big thing for a conference, especially like the SEC, is that they already are starting with how many in the top 10 are SEC? Yeah, I know it's a coach's poll, but like, I don't expect that to be
that's the coach's poll.
too different than the AP.
I don't think.
And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 10 are SEC, 3 are Big 10, 1 ACC, and Notre Dame. Like, so these conferences are already just starting at an advantage, and then 3 of the next 5 are Big 10 or SEC, 2 of which are SEC. Like, there's just such an easier path for them.
I agree. All right. I think we're going to wrap up on this one last question here, and that's we're going to take a deep shot here for some bold predictions. We already talked about the preseason poll, so let's look at that. Which preseason top 10 team do you think, if you had a bet, would miss the playoff this coming up year? So take a look back at that coaches poll. Which of those top 10 teams between Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Notre Dame, Indiana, Miami, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Ole Miss would you think is going to miss the playoffs? So we'll start with you, Jess. What do you got?
If I had to choose one of them, I'm going to choose A&M. They've got a very tough schedule, I think. A lot of their tougher games, they kind of got the rough end of, and they're on the road at LSU, at Alabama, at Oklahoma. And and then they end the year with a stretch of at Bama, home against South Carolina, home against Tennessee, at Oklahoma, home for Texas. So there's just a lot of opportunity for them to stumble at the worst possible time right down the stretch. So I could easily see again, if we think LSU can be as good as we think they might be, lose to LSU early on, then just have one, if not two losses in that final stretch down the road where maybe they don't look great. I can easily see them falling out of the playoffs there.
How do you got, Jordan?
Ole Miss probably. I mean, if you had to choose someone besides Texas A&M, I'd say Ole Miss. They have a tough schedule too. I mean, they have LSU, then at Florida, then at Vanderbilt. They play Missouri, at Texas, Auburn, Georgia, Oklahoma. They start the year against Louisville, who, I mean, we don't talk about a lot of like other ACC schools, but Louisville beat Miami last year, so you never know. So I could see them dropping two, 3 games, and then them getting forced out, kind of thing. Just because the top,
Yeah.
I could see the top half of the SEC being kind of
It's good.
stacked.
Yeah, I think my original pick was going to be Texas A&M because the points I made earlier about the schedule compared to last year, I feel like they benefited last year from the easier schedule. Now they're going to get hit with the harder schedule this year, so I can see them falling out. The one team, if I had to just outside the ones you guys already named, if I had to name a team in the top 10, it'd probably be Texas. And I know, laugh at you want, but if you look at their schedule, Ohio State, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Florida, which they lost to last year, Ole Miss, LSU, Texas A&M. So that's 6 teams, and 7 if you count Florida. So they would need to go 5-2 against that schedule to make the playoff. If they go 4-3, they're not getting into the playoff. They'll be 9-3 again, like they were last year. And then Stark will have a conniption fit because they lost those 3 games. So I honestly, if I had to pick anybody outside of Texas A&M, it would probably be Texas. I also feel like Oklahoma could take a step back if Mateer is not like on all the time. So those will be my picks, all SEC. And this is because, one, I do feel like the SEC, they have tough matchups throughout the year. Now, I think where the Big Ten is more, I think they're better at the top. Compared to our conversation last week, I think they're heavier at the top, but then I think SEC is just more stacked throughout, and it makes harder matchups throughout the year. So I could see if anybody falls out, it's probably going to be some of those SEC teams that might get into that 9-3 range and not make the playoffs. So that'll be my bet if I had to make a bet. Yeah, you know me, I am not an Arch fan.
Texas, all on Arch.
I like him. Okay, I like the guy, but I just not a believer in his hype. So I just feel like.
Tony, who do you hate more, Arch Manning or USC?
If he was on USC, that would be like my that'd be yeah.
See, but the thing is, what's worse is how Lincoln Riley is.
Yeah,
that makes us hate.
I think I respected him more
back
in the 2000s when they were structured with Pete Carroll and everything. I didn't like Reggie Bush as much, especially after the Bush push, but I can respect him. These days, I feel like they're not the same physical team that backs up what they talk about. They just talk and don't really back things up, and so I feel like that's why I don't like USC today. But Arch, I just feel like no. And this all goes back to the hype that he was given. I feel like at high school we always talk about. I just feel like also he has the tools around him, so he should be able to do it. But man, if he has a couple bad games and that pressure starts to get to him, I do wonder how he's gonna handle that throughout the year because he probably didn't handle it as best he could last year, and he might have been injured, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's weird to say Texas and Oklahoma are kind of in the similar boat right now. And is Oklahoma's quarterback going to be good? Is Texas quarterback going to be good this year?
All right, guys. With that, we will wrap it up this week. If you, as always, follow along with us on X at In the Flat Pod, and then obviously we're out there putting content out on YouTube as well, so you'll see bits and pieces of this out there. So keep following along with us at In the Flat Podcast out there on YouTube, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Bye.